Rory, owner of Fein Design, residential design build firm, and we've been in business since 1995. So what really started my interest in architecture and design as a young kid, I just always loved drawing and sketching and being creative and doing color and building models, things like that. And I think that carried me through with my elementary, middle school, and high school years. In fact, I have a fond memory. 30 years later, after graduating from elementary school, my nephew went there, and that art teacher retired and gave him some drawings that I had done 30 years earlier, and she used those as inspiration all those years, and it touched me. And that's one of the beautiful things about being creative and what I love to do. My story of almost actually dropping out of architecture school, I was at a breaking point literally a week before you had the opportunity to drop out of class and take on a different major. My professor took me aside and said, you need to really reconsider what you're doing here, because I don't know that this is meant for you. And I really hunkered down and did a great job. And when I came back to class, he spent about 2 hours going through, it was a 3-hour class, spent about 2 hours going through the other 20 students in my class, and spent the last hour talking about my project. One of the students gave him a tissue box because he had tears of joy of how proud he was of what I had accomplished. And from that point on, I kind of took off and really became one of the better design students in my graduating class. But a more even beautiful story to that, 20 years later, the School of Architecture at UWM had a reunion party, and I was invited, and I ran into that professor, and he remembered that story and said he told it for inspiration to a lot of his students. And I almost get a tear in my eye thinking about, wow, he remembered me and remembered that story and still preached it to his students for inspiration. So a great story. When I was lucky enough to get an internship right out of college, I started out working for free because during the time that I started, there wasn't a lot of work available, so I was lucky to even have an internship. And then eventually I proved myself, and I remember specifically to this date, I made $219.44 every 2 weeks. So I'm not sure how I survived on $450 a month, but I did. And I learned quickly how to do things and try and get my feet wet. But I also learned right away that I wasn't very knowledgeable about a lot on how things got done in the real world. So I took it upon myself to get a job swinging a hammer, learning carpentry, understanding the trades. I got a job with a cabinet maker. I got a job with a surveying engineer. So I really kind of broadened my spectrum on how things really get done. I think it molded me in such a way that I understand when I'm doing design what the carpenter might be thinking, what the heating guy might be thinking, the plumber. So when I'm doing a remodel or a new home, I take all that into account. Even when I'm just doing the design of the floor plan, I'm thinking of all those trades and how it's going to come together. So having that experience working out in the field has really benefited me.